Good afternoon. This is Dr. David back with the Fresh Start with Dr. David podcast. I am glad to be back with you. We recently had some episodes and some really, really good topics, like, for instance, the concept of free and the idea that things have more value or they have value when there's energy and effort put into them by you, which kind of activates things. Those are some conversations that we had with Gary Scott. We also did a recent episode with Phoenix Soul about her new book, which is all about being and creating your own peace. It's called Be Your Own Peace. So be sure to check that out on Amazon. And then we also did some other episodes where we talked about some other topics too, like grief and bereavement and loss and kind of the processes that go along with those. And also the concept that you can use some of the processes that people use for grief, for depression, anxiety, and other things like that. So I'm so glad to be back with you. As many of you know, there are a lot of crazy things going on in this world right now, which is why we need people who are focused on peace and brilliance and things like that, things that bring people together and bring opportunities and choices and abundance and prosperity. And so with that, I'm so excited today to bring a guest. I'm so curious, absolutely curious about the things that she does. We're all going to learn a lot. She does so many different things. And I'm so excited to have with us today our special guest, Barbara With. Welcome, Barbara.
Oh, thank you, Dr. David, for having me. I'm very excited about our conversation.
Absolutely. Oh my God. I'm so fascinated. I'm truly fascinated by all the different things that you do. And I think it's the perfect time for them because with the world, this planet, the way that it is right now, I think we need more peace and we need more peace activism and we need more knowledge and wisdom and people like Albert Einstein to guide us. So I'm so excited to have you here today. And just in a few minutes, people will understand why I just said what I said, but I'm so happy to have you here today.
Well, I think this is a conversation that should be had every day. I think it's something that is such easy concept to understand, but sometimes very difficult to do.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm glad we have you here to simplify things and dumb them down a little bit, especially for me, because I have always been a fan of science. I've always been a fan of metaphysics. I've always been a fan of physics. I loved physics when I was in college, especially physics lab, where you did experiments and tried to guess things and predict things like that. So I'm so glad that you're here. If you don't mind, I'm going to share just a little bit about you with the audience, Barbara, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So guys, listen to this. Barbara With, and her last name is spelled W-I-T-H. Her first name is Barbara. She's an international peace activist. She's an award-winning author and publisher, and she's published many books, which I'll get to in a minute. She uses a psychic channel. She's a composer, a performer. She facilitates workshops, and she's an inspirational speaker. I mean, she does it all, and I love that because I think the more different arenas and sectors and fields that you dive into, I think, at least from my perspective, each one builds upon the other one. So the more that you understand, for instance, about, let's say, cooking, the better you understand about, let's say, hosting. You know what I mean? Because those two things go together. Or the better you understand about making beverages or drinks, the more that you understand about how to pair that with the right foods, the way that a chef would. So I love people who are multidimensional. And so this is great. Barbara With is the co-founder of Conflict Revolution, not conflict resolution, but conflict revolution, which is a revolutionary way to resolve conflicts of the psyche based on her work channeling one of our greatest, I think, minds, Albert Einstein. And I love Albert Einstein. I love movies and things that talk about relativity. I did an episode about the concept of time and the relative nature of time and space, or as Albert Einstein said, space-time. And I'm so excited. She has authored 6 books on metaphysics, and they're all about topics like metaphysics and peace and very advanced things posed by Albert Einstein. One of her books is Manifestation, Conflict, Revolution, and the New Operating System. And it was a winner of the 2016 Best Book Awards for New Age and a finalist in the 2017 Book Excellence Awards for Body, Mind, and Spirit. She also wrote Imagining Einstein, essays on M theory, which I can't wait to hear about that, World Peace, and The Science of Compassion, which also was the winner of several book awards. She was also the author of Party of 12, The Afterlife Interviews, which was the winner of at least one book award, the 2008 Beach Book Awards for Spirituality. There's another book that goes with that, Party of 12, Post 9/11, which came out in 2008, and also the book Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, Talking with the Angels, which was also a finalist in several book awards. In addition, Barbara teaches and trains people on conflict resolution in the classroom and on virtual and Zoom sessions, lectures on Einstein's unified field theory, maps of human consciousness, and the science of compassion. Wow. Wow. I can't even voice how impressed I am with all this. Oh
Where
my
do
God.
we start?
I'm going to get an education today. Oh my God. I love
You
this.
are.
Yeah, I love this. So that was a bunch of things that I just listed. If I were to ask you, because I get asked this question all the time, and I wouldn't say it's a canned answer, but I kind of have the best answer that I've come to when people ask me, what do you do? Because I'm an MD, I have several master's degrees, I have several practices in mental health and wellness, self-improvement. But when people ask me what I really do, I say I heal. That's the best word that I could find to describe what I feel that I do. I feel and I heal. What would you say that you do, Barbara?
I would say that I am a publisher, an author, and a psychic channel. And they all sort of weave into each other. The work of the psychic channeling, all of those 6 books of metaphysics are based on my firsthand experience. They're all nonfiction books. And they're based on my firsthand experience being the psychic channel.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole description of how I became this channel for Einstein is a whole story in and of itself. But then there's also the other side of it, which is kind of what you were talking about in some of your episodes about this healing that I, just as a person, aside from being a musician or a psychic channel or any of that,
Mm-hmm.
I had a very, very traumatizing childhood.
Mm.
And I ended up,
Unknown caller.
Sorry about that.
that's okay. I ended up very blessed
Uh-huh.
to have followed this journey of discovering I call it intuitive arts,
Okay.
and being guided to the paths of channeling that I have to deliver this information of conflict revolution, which was really about how healing the psyche, each of us individually healing our own, is the pathway to global peace.
Okay.
So I was able to use this information that I was channeling on my own trauma, on my own life-saving healing process, as a way not just to further prove how well the theory works that we've received and tested and turned into conflict revolution, but to actually save my own life and bring
Wow.
me to a new level of this. I call it unification, really, because when you're traumatized, you're often dealing with,
Mm.
fractured personalities, dissociative personalities. And there's a whole process that psychology and psychiatry go through in dealing with that and how you do that. But in this process, I just found it to be what it is, revolutionary and very, very successful, very, very successful in working on my own life. So, I'm really excited about this work.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm going to start off, because I can tell this is complex stuff. I'm going to start off with just some basic stuff because, we live in a society where different words tend to have different connotations, right? So like my practices are holistic. You could say naturalistic. You could also say naturopathic, but they're holistic. And a lot of people are like, what does holistic mean? And I'll explain it to them because I should know what holistic means. in your case, one of the big things about you is being a psychic channel. And so part of what I want to do is inform the audience and myself, because I think a lot of times we assume we know what something means, but we really don't. Now, I think I have a pretty good idea what a channel is. And I talk a lot about that with my clients and the work that I do. But I wouldn't say so much with psychic. So I'm going to ask you, what does psychic mean? And then what does psychic channel mean? What do those mean?
Psychic is an ability to perceive and receive and then disseminate information, I think, from non-physical sources.
Okay.
So energy, also in the map of human consciousness that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Intuition is an essential, we call it sort of it's one of the three human dimensions, but
Mm-hmm.
It's like a spiritual organ that absolutely everyone has.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that some people are psychic and some people are not. I think some people are more prone to it. Some people are, like you were talking about, when we were raised in the 60s and 70s, we
Right.
were exposed to certain things. So, but there are also different types of how people use these intuitive arts. We've all seen mediums, right? The
Right.
people who Long Island psychic talks to dead people. And then we've seen other types of people using their psychic ability to make predictions. And for me, my psychic, I'm using my air quotes now,
Right.
also went into the realm of music because I started writing music at a very young age.
Mm.
The way that I would write music, I always described as going into outer space and listening for the song.
Wow.
And then hearing it and then bringing forth maybe 4-8 bars that I would hear until then, there were the next 4 to 8 bars. So that was really a type of channeling. And I think channeling as a rule that we're all sort of channeling our own lives,
Mm-hmm.
From our soul. But this kind of specific type of channeling Einstein, I think is it's a unique story for sure. Like many people could grow up and go to journalism school and become journalists, but how many people could be Barbara Walters?
True.
So there's some of it is practice, some of it is application. Like I did, I was drawn to it and I had good mentors, and other part of it, I think, is just a kind of a destiny that I came here to fulfill.
Right.
Be this emissary for this venerable group of souls who have been working in the afterlife to help us bring peace to the planet. So I hope that it's kind of a clear idea. It's it's kind of a controversial topic, especially if you have a particular religion, Christianity. The Bible is
Right.
like has warnings of it. What you don't want to get taken over by bad spirits or what have you.
Right.
But for the most part, I look at it more on a kind of a scientific level. Of course, now that I've delivered all this amazing information that explains how it works. So,
Well, one of the things that I think is, and I could be wrong, but I think a lot of things that a lot of times people put in opposition aren't in opposition. And so, I'm African American, I'm mixed race, a multi-ethnic American, Indian, Jewish, African American. And I don't have to choose any of those. They're all there. They're all part of the picture. I think the same thing is true about religion. If you ask me religiously what I am, I'd say, well, I'm a Jew religiously, but I believe in psychic things. I believe in metaphysics. I also believe in, for instance, Kabbalah. I believe in astrology. I believe that all of it kind of goes together. So I don't really look at it necessarily as in opposition with my beliefs. And I know a lot of people who, for instance, are Christians who also believe in psychic things like that. In terms of like the word channel, so I get a sense of psychic. Psychic is this kind of intuitive other sense that we may have, right? In terms of the word channel, that kind of, and I'm probably using these interchangeably when they probably are technically from a physics standpoint different. But when I think of channel, I think of, for instance, a certain like frequency or like radio frequency or something like that. Is that the same way that you think of it, like a channel as a frequency that you tap into or
Well, I
project?
might not have explained it that way until now, but it is like picking up a particular frequency. So,
Mhm.
for example, one of the parts of this beautiful map of human consciousness is that we all have this thing that Einstein calls our inner gravity.
Okay.
So it's the inner mathematics that make up my unique self. So
Okay.
there's DNA, there's what space time we're in, there's all
Uh-huh.
kinds of mathematical formations that
Right.
are part of this. So to channel, I would pick up the frequency of Albert Einstein's unique gravity, which apparently, according to him, doesn't end when the body dies,
Right.
and then be able to pull it in through my body using my thoughts, feelings, senses to be able to articulate what it is I'm listening to on that frequency. Just like when I was a kid writing music and I was listening to a particular frequency of song and able to translate it and bring it in as music. Now I'm able to do it with the information that Einstein wants to deliver to us.
Okay. So I'm gonna be asking you a lot of what I call curiosity and then just like basic knowledge questions that I'm curious about. So one of the things that and I'll hopefully we can dive into all of these things. But one of the things, so I remember a long time ago, and I don't remember who the author was, or it maybe it was Einstein. I can't remember. But that term, maps of human consciousness, I've seen that before. I can't remember where I saw it. Maybe it was with Einstein. I don't know. But I know I've seen that phrase. What does maps of human consciousness mean? What does that mean?
Well, there is another author, philosopher. I can't remember his name,
Mm-hmm.
but I also just ran across a few months ago
Uh-huh.
that he had these very intricate maps of
Mm-hmm.
human consciousness that he worked with.
Yeah.
In, in our work, part of what happened was it was 2005 when I decided I wanted to channel just a book for Einstein. And it was the 100-year anniversary of E equals MC squared in all his miracle years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sat down, I had no idea what he was going to tell me.
Okay.
And I channeled 6, 7 groups and I transcribed them and I sat down to edit it. And the upshot was he delivered to me his unified field theory, which he didn't do when he was alive. So the map of everything, how things operate on the microcosm the same way in the macrocosm.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, there was what he called the map of human consciousness, because you do not get the physical world without having a human experience.
Right.
And so the map of human consciousness shows how we interact with the whole entire field, the unified field, to create our little corner of the world, our little corner of reality, of our piece of the universe that we're experiencing.
Right.
And and then and then conflict revolution is how to, let's say, manage this map as to so that we can facilitate the greatest good manifestation outcome that we can possibly exert upon our corner of reality. So yeah, it's it's on that level.
So, okay. So, I'm as you say this, I'm, obviously, thinking about these things and trying to imagine them. So, I know that one of the things, or several of the things that Einstein was known for is number one, some of the equations about gravity and gravitational forces. Also, about relativity, and also the concept of space time. Whereas prior to Einstein, scientists and researchers thought that space was one thing and time was another thing. And Einstein came along and said, well, no, they're one thing. And so it's kind of like this, he kind of what I call the blanket theory, right, of space and time. And if a blanket folds, then, you've got places that are kind of occupying the same space and time at the same time. And you've got, wormholes and black holes and things like that. And so I'm trying to picture a little bit of this. So I'm thinking of kind of how a 3D map would be with topography, with kind of like mountains and plains and inclines and declines and things like that, and that being kind of a map of consciousness. What is Einstein's unified field theory? What's a unified field versus
Okay.
an ununified field, I guess, a non-unified field?
Well, his unified field theory that he's brought through me,
Uh-huh.
it's a map of how matter is manifest, how we have this human experience, and I can kind of basically draw, and you're onto it when you were talking about, you're looking, let's say you're looking down at the earth and you
Mm-hmm.
see the mountains and the oceans and you see the planet.
Right.
Well, I can walk you through what his basic unified field theory is
Okay.
visually. Okay, so he says that everything, the source of everything, originates in the center of the planet, and that it operates like a black hole,
Hmm.
and that compassion is, he defines with a capital C, as the fifth fundamental force of the universe, that it is the creative intelligence that uses the other four fundamental forces to impel the creation of the physical world, the physical universe, one step at a time. So what that means is that compassion with a capital C, his definition is rooted in three different, let's say, ways that this compassion impels energy to create matter. Okay, so the first one is like a compass that draws circles. There's a compass, you put the point down on the
Right.
paper and you draw circles. So compassion impels energy to create these spherical electromagnetic domains that he calls, they're really the singularity of each of us, but
Uh-huh.
he calls them compilations of consciousness.
Okay.
So out of the nothing, compassion impels energy to step out into the everything and create a circular membrane domain that surrounds all of the mathematics that is going to eventually end up being my experience of humanity. And you
Okay.
have your own compilation. So from that compilation that's in the center of the earth, there is a gravitational wave that flows up to the surface of the planet, and it bursts through the surface of the planet, thereby creating the physical body in what we call the lens. And these are actually terms from real science of
Right.
black holes, the
Right.
source, the lens. So it creates the body, and the body then projects and perceives that wave with all of that mysterious, magical M theory. Edward Witten, M can stand for miracle or manifestation or membrane. And so the wave projects, and then the body also then perceives the whole entire universe in that lens, and there's the space time. That's where space time exists. But the wave continues on out into the heavens until it meets up with the Earth's actual electromagnetic field. And it gets pulled back up through the North Pole, back down into the center of the planet to begin again. And that spinning string is what you might call it, I think the whole operating system is the soul, but that spinning string is where all of our mathematics compile, so to speak. So everything we do in the lens, we turn left, all these things happen. We turn right, all those other things happen. All of that compiles on this wave, and it spins at the speed of light squared. But when it gets into the lens, it slows down like a lens, like a prism,
Like the
right?
curvature.
And when a light goes through the prism, everything separates out into all the different colors. So, and it slows down when it gets to the lens. The body slows that, the speed of light squared wave down to the speed of light, which is why in the physical world we experience the speed of light, but in the whole operating system there's the speed of light squared. So yeah, that's kind of basically the the form and structure. So the compilation has the same structure as the Earth itself, right? So the microcosm of our compilation is mirroring the same structure as the Earth itself. And the second thing compassion does, like a compass, it aligns all of our compilations to true north so that we're all on the same map. We're all have the same reference frame and we're all having the same human experience. And the human dimensions, and now the ones we work with in conflict resolution that we're learning who we really are in this inner world, this inner non-physical world, is emotion, intuition, and intellect. And
Okay.
these are parts of this gravitational wave. So when the wave leaves the compilation, it's on its way to the surface of the planet. It first gets into this emotion, and this emotion, this is like this quantum chaotic field where the chair and you and everybody else are all beginning to become particles, and the inner gravity of who I'm programmed to be and the inner gravity of who you are programmed to be are starting to pull us together into form. It's the very first step into form. And then as we move into the second of intuition, then sound is born, and intuition is born as the voice of compassion within us that is always impelling us to take that next step for the good of this whole operating system. So intuition is really the voice of God, I suppose, within us. And it's always working for the good of the whole system because compassion has imbued all of our particles with the innate understanding that we are actually all one being here.
Wow.
And then the third dimension, and this is where all the trouble begins, is intellect. Because intellect was designed then to take all that math, right? You have the math, this is going to be a chair. And intuition says, go be you and be a chair. And then intellect takes that and begins to define. So that is a chair. That is a table. It's starting to define form so that we can perceive all that form. But what happens is the ego, which is in the realm of the intellect, this is where our free will is exercised. We do not exercise decision making with our intuition. Intuition will impel us to do something, but intellect has been given the power to either, we've all had this intuition saying rest, right? Very simple, rest. Intellect can say, I can't rest. I've got too many things to do.
Right.
And then make the decision to go off and do all those things,
Right.
ignoring the voice of God within. And Einstein says between that intuition and that intellect is the root of the manifestation of all conflict on the planet.
Oh, wow.
If you get down to that point, that's the uniform rudimental place where conflicts begin.
Wow. Wow. Oh my God.
A start.
This is not light stuff at all. The funny thing about it is I did really good in physics, especially in physics lab, just because it kind of came intuitively to me. Physics did. I don't know. It was just like one of these languages. Algebra was the same way. There were certain things that I was just naturally good at. Algebra was one of them. It just seemed natural to me. And physics was another. Trig, where you think about things in circles and radians, was the opposite. I really had to think about things differently in circles instead of lines and squares and rectangles and things like that. And it was eye-opening. And then, geometry made a lot of sense to me too. But I don't remember learning about a lot of this stuff in physics, especially some of the deeper things that you're talking about in terms of, Einstein and unified field theory. And I mean, I remember touching on gravity and all those complex equations and some things like this. Let me ask you this question. Do you like science fiction?
I'm not a big science fiction fan, and
Uh-huh.
I totally dropped out of physics and math.
Uh-huh.
Completely into music,
Uh-huh.
and music has its own kind of mathematics. But
True.
in fact, on my Facebook page, I just found my high school report card, and for my senior year, and I went from AA in physics to a D.
Oh, wow.
So I think there was some sort of bigger purpose in that, because all of this stuff that I'm explaining to you, this is what he has delivered from afterlife. I mean, no one today has quite a comprehensive unified field, even though I'm not a mathematician. I'm not the one to write the mathematical formulas to come up with these.
Right.
But when I look at today's modern physics, Brian Greene, and there's a Thomas Campbell has, the theory of everything, and Nassim Harriman, and they all have pieces of what I'm talking about. But this map that I've been given and then have presented over and over and over to many, many people in the world, including some major scientists who are saying, wow, you're really on something. So it wouldn't have been there when you were studying physics.
Wow. That's amazing. So let me ask you. So we talked a little bit about unified field theory. We talked about a little bit about maps of consciousness. We also talked. You mentioned a little bit about the science and compassion and things like that. Another thing that I kind of am curious about is one of the things that you mentioned, or is that's mentioned about you, is kind of you channeling Albert Einstein, right? So, in terms of channeling Albert Einstein, how do you just so I get a kind of a sense of channeling something or channeling someone? How does that work?
Well, it's it's a bit of a more intense
Uh-huh.
story to
It
get
sounds
there.
mentally tedious. It sounds like it uses a lot of cerebral blood flow and oxygen to me.
It's actually just the opposite
Really?
because,
Okay.
well, it's because like in singing, for
Yes.
example,
Hmm.
I close my eyes and I get out of the way, and my voice, my body, the air, right, breathing creates the song. And so with Einstein or anyone else, I'm just about to do a Tesla channel actually this week.
Yeah.
Um, I get out of the way. I close my eyes and I get out of the way and just let that flow happen. And it happens so brilliantly.
Hmm.
So, especially after all these years, I've been channeling now since 1987. So it's so brilliantly pre-edited. That's what I'd say.
Right.
Pre-edited is I can sit there and talk and these brilliant things come out of my mouth with just language that's beautiful and poetic and deep, multi-meaning. And that's how I know it's not me.
Right.
Because I'm good at a lot of things, but not the level of what is coming out. However, to really understand that I didn't start out wanting to be a psychic channel. I started out wanting to be a rock star.
Right.
So my focus through most of my, first 20 years of my life was into music. And
Uh-huh.
when I started to channel, my mentor, who worked with me since I was in high school, she was just an antenna. There wasn't any angels or dead people or famous dead people. It was just she was picking up this higher power and relating it back to my human mind. So when I started the channel, that's how I felt. I was just antenna picking up this information. And in 1993, I wanted to see what would happen if I channeled for groups of people. What would this voice say to groups of people? And I happened upon these two women who were best friends and had come to me out of referrals and just couldn't get enough. And so we started to organize groups, and this was a psychic sorority, we called ourselves. And in those groups, they asked, "Who are you?" And even them asking a question in a session of channeling made me nervous because I'm a natural skeptic. I think skepticism is a really healthy process to go through. And
Absolutely.
I thought, angels, really? And we talked about it, the three of us. And what we decided was ultimately we didn't care if it was the Easter Bunny because what they were telling us was changing our lives so profoundly for the better that we felt like, well, you can tell them by their fruits. Okay, all right, fine, angels. And we worked with this, and the angels said they had this revolutionary process for first resolving conflict within people, which was the byproduct would be world peace. And they needed humans who had conflicts to test their theory on. And so that's what the three of us became. We had real conflicts that then we had the wherewithal to go get these initial transcripts, I've been recording and transcribing and seeing what they say. And piece by piece, we found out that yes, this process these quote unquote angels had we're having revolutionary results between us, with our families, with our friends, with our well-being, with our health, with our ex-husbands, with our children. It was really changing everything. So we became addicted to the fact that it was working, not the fact that, oh, these were angels and I was special. No, we were doing the work. I was channeling it, but we were actually doing the work. So when the first book came out, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, I had a tiny little bit of a reputation where there was a paranormal tabloid in London that wanted a interview with Princess Diana from Beyond the Grave on the 1 year anniversary. And again, skeptical, never done such a thing, but thought let's try it, let's see what happens. And it was so profound.
Wow.
I'm kind of shocked.
Wow.
And they didn't want it. But my agent and I said, well, maybe there's other famous dead people who want to talk. Let's make a list.
Right.
And Einstein wasn't on it.
Right.
So we went through, and by the time we got to John Kennedy, he told us, listen, put your list away. We'll tell you who's going to come up in the queue, because we are a party of 12 who have been working the afterlife trying to help you with world peace, and we'll tell you who's next. So when Einstein came up and I channeled it, now this is 1998, so I'd been channeling since 1987.
Okay.
This was the voice of all of my channeling. This was the voice of every reading I'd ever given up until the time I was distant, Princess Di and John Kennedy. And I was shocked. It kind of took me several years to begin to accept that. I mean, listen to it. Oh yeah. Einstein, right. Einstein found me, right. It really, and I was, I wouldn't say I was embarrassed because it was so profound, but it wasn't like I was running out going, hey, everybody, I can channel Einstein. It was like,
Right.
Wow, what does this mean? What is the implications of this?
Right.
And so in 2005, I thought, I love him so much after channeling him. And so we did Imagining Einstein essays on M theory, world peace, and the science of compassion. I had no idea what he was going to say. So when he delivered this unified field theory and these maps of human consciousness, and especially the scientific definition of compassion as the fifth fundamental force, which I thought was brilliant. But as I said, I'm not a scientist. I'm not even an amateur physicist or a mathematician. So when he said the source of everything is in the center of the planet and it operates like a black hole, I was a little mortified. Like, here I am. I talk to dead people. I'm supposed to go out into the world and tell them that the source is like a black hole in the center of the planet. Okay, I have to trust the process. And now, of course, all those many years later, you're hearing Brian Greene now in 2024 tell us that it's very likely that life originates in a black hole, and there's small kinds of black holes as they are big kinds. It's all been revealed through all these years that what he has delivered is indeed, I think, just one of the most brilliant examples of a unified field I've ever seen.
What's funny is I remember my dad's a minister. When I was growing up, he was a teacher, but he went to seminary school. I think he was 55 when he went, something like that. And he's been a minister, for quite a while now, like a decade and a half. But it's funny though, because some of the things that he said that he believed in, like spirits and angels and things like that, I know, like when we had discussions about it, I guess my Virgo, INTJ mind, was skeptical about things and kind of questioned it. But it's funny because when he had some birthdays, I actually was curious and I was like, well, you know what? Let me get him a book on angels. And I got him a couple of books on angels and things like that. And it's funny because, to look at it in black and white, when people talk about, like channeling this person or channeling that person or channeling somebody who's beyond this world or, beyond our living world as we conceive of it, it seems like far out there, but it's so funny. I have a great love for my grandparents. They started off as sharecroppers and they became millionaires by hard work. They became teachers. I'm like the third generation of people in my family to have at least a bachelor's degree, second generation doctors. And I'm so proud of the things that my grandparents did in terms of like their work ethic and their values and their beliefs and their principles and things like that. And it's funny because when I think about them and I think about what they brought to this world and what they represented, when I think about that stuff and my connection to it, and I kind of feel empowered by it, I honestly don't know if that comes from my memory of them or a connection or a channel that I feel like I had to them now. And I know, when we think about people who've passed, we visit their grave sites, we speak to them, we talk to them, we pray about them. So I don't really think any of this is really that strange because in our world, I think most people tend to have a connection with somebody who has left, this world that we're alive in, but we feel a connection to them through a channel, an antenna, a frequency, or something else. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think people don't know
What to do with it?
they don't because
Right.
there's some stigmas. Like I said, there in some
Mhm.
Christianity, there's stigmas about you don't want to get possessed and such.
Right.
But I always say that Jesus. Okay, Jesus wrote. Yeah, he came here to show us that this is what we can do. We can do what he can do, even greater.
Right.
He died. He rose from the dead.
Right.
He went talked to the people who he loved, who recognized him, and said, "Hey, just to remind you, this is what y'all are going to do." Why should it be such a stretch for any of us to think that there's an unseen world, a mysterious world? It's only, I think, in the past, I think since the industrial age, when they moved us out of nature and moved
Mhm.
us into in apartment houses and disconnected
Cities.
from yeah, and the whole root of community and what love is, that kind of compassion that means we're all part of one thing. And they've really tried to I shouldn't say they have tried to disconnect, but the way humanity has evolved, we've
Right.
become disconnected from those mysteries that were for eons and cultures, all across all cultures. There's angels, there's afterlife, there's all of this mysterious honoring of those things. So I have found in my work through the years that people come oftentimes, especially in those early years, in the first 10 years or so, really wanting validation that they really were talking to their grandparents.
Yeah.
And it's easy because they're right there.
Yeah.
There's really, Einstein always says it's it's not like you go to the light and then you're just gone. It's all an intermingling of energy that we in the physical world, we're so focused on the physical world
Right.
that we're not anywhere near aware of that non-physical part of us, just because we're so busy having a physical experience.
I totally agree with that. There's one of my favorite movies ever. I am a big science fiction fan, and I think it's just because of where I grew up and how I grew up and things that I was exposed to at a young age, like Star Trek and Doctor Who and all these
Yeah.
kind of things and stuff from the 60s and 70s. Even though I was born in 73, there were a lot of remnants, I guess. I'd like to think that the 60s shaped a lot of the 70s and 70s shaped a lot of the 80s and from there on out. But I know that I know that, when one of my favorite movies is this movie. I don't know if you've seen it. It's called Interstellar. And it's basically about how this planet is like we're wasting all the resources. This planet's not going to last much longer. And Matthew McConaughey is in this movie and some other famous actors. But basically, they're looking for another place that's compatible with life for humans and for humanity and the other species on this planet. And so they, take these missions or whatever. But if you, and I got it on iTunes, but if you get the iTunes extra version of it, they've got a documentary that goes with the movie that explains all the physics behind it, literally by physicists. And they have a physicist there explaining to you, well, this is what space time is, and this what it really means to travel forward in time and back in time, and it really, really, truly explains the relativity of time and how, for instance, if you're on the surface of this planet versus being out of space, out in space. And what I mean is where the space station is, where our space station is, time moves at different speeds. It's not the same. And so, but most people don't have a sense of the relativity of time, space, and things like that. And, that movie does a really, really good job, or the documentary and the movie too, of kind of explaining kind of that whole concept of, even though I'm having this experience right now here in this time and place, there could be somebody else who's passed, as far as I'm concerned, who's actually still living in a different dimension. And it really, really does open up your mind about the whole concept of space and time and how things aren't as black and white or as flat as we tend to think of them in our own reality.
Oh, absolutely. Now I have to see that movie. But
it's brilliant. Get the version with the and you probably will recognize that physicist who they have explaining kind of this thing, because one of the things that happens in the movie is Matthew McConaughey's character, they go looking for life on a different planet, and they have to travel light years to get to that planet. But the thing about it is, once they arrive at that planet, time and space aren't at the same speed as here on Earth. And so, for instance, when they get to this other planet, when they're on that other planet, hours on that other planet's surface equals like 30 decades on planet Earth. And so by the time he comes back, his daughter, who was a child when he left on this mission, is now on her deathbed. And so he's standing there as a younger guy in his 30s or 40s talking to his 60-something-year-old daughter. And it's just brilliant how it explains kind of the relativity of time and space, and kind of how we think about it through this tiny lens that you mentioned earlier of our own experience. But in all reality, when you take into account, metaphysics and all these other different principles, it's not as static as we'd like to think, or as we pictured it or imagined it.
Well, and one of the things I love about these maps is that when you're looking at the map, and it's like you're looking down at the Earth, and you're seeing the gravitational wave, and it's going to the surface of the planet. And here it is now. It's 2024. It's in northern Wisconsin. My body's here. It shows us how, when we go into the source and into this compilation, and there's all these mathematics, there's all these mathematics for me to be this DNA space-time body, time, size, color, all those things. But another gravitational wave can also be exiting our compilation that has a different life. Yeah. And so in that sense, that wave is now going to 900 Ireland, and I'm a 12-year-old Irish queen of a whatever. And so, but that gravitational wave comes back up, back around into the center of the planet, down to begin again. And you see how they bleed through. You can see how in this, some people talk about healing timelines or healing past lives. You see how the emotion, intuition, intellect, and all of that life in Ireland comes back down the North Pole into the black hole, and it intermingles with the wave that's me. And I take some of that energy back up my wave. And in this way, this is going to be my next book about how we can heal these timelines,
Hmm.
other lives, also timelines of our past, our traumatized past, in this particular body, and how to do it. And it's really fascinating.
Well, and one of the things about it too is, and by the way, that's one of the services that I offer at my practice is timeline therapy, where I try to help people basically map out the future they want to create. As you may or may not know, I have a holistic mental health and wellness practice, but I do a lot of things that are kind of outside the box for people who want to change and grow and heal in a more holistic way. And one of the things that I do is timeline therapy. And basically, the timeline therapy that I do is kind of based on this kind of belief here. Whatever you envision the future to be, the more likely you are to get the future that you want if you envision the future that you want, right? Whatever you can see happening in the future is more likely to happen than things that you are not likely to imagine in the future. And so you can kind of project what you want. And so from a practical, cerebral, frontal brain standpoint, we call that planning, right? I mean, that's the cerebral thing that we call it, the conscious cerebral thing. We call it planning. You plan for success and you get success and you follow these steps, but you can also imagine it visually and mentally. And so that's one of the things that I do with people is to help their goals, plans, and objectives kind of match what they envision for the future, and then that makes it much more likely to happen. And I do that with timeline therapy. But it's also my belief that a lot of times when you see people with things like anxiety and worry and trepidation, they're doing the same thing, only they're seeing something negative happen. And I truly believe that's why a lot of times people do manifest negative things, because when they worry, when they, trepidate about things, they're actually more likely to cause what they're scared of because they're thinking and tapping into that energy. By the same means, I also believe that it's true that in terms of kind of what we feel sometimes, like for instance, if somebody has a weird sense or a second sense or a deja vu moment or past life things, I think some of it is kind of tapping into these kind of time, space, metaphysical things that you're talking about in your books.
Yeah, very much so. And I just want to say something about this work, because it's very powerful when you have so many mediums, shall I say, that you're a doctor, you're this, you're that, and so you can sort of work the whole bunch of them into a process that works for whoever, meeting people where they are, and what you can do. What I had to learn about manifestation in this way
Mm-hmm.
was a little bit deviated from that, because all I ever saw myself as long as I could stand up and hold a hairbrush and sing Heat Wave, was that I was going to be a rock star. And
Uh-huh.
I went right out on the road right after high school. I already had 2 sets of original music. I spent 20 years of my life,
Uh-huh.
and I did not manifest, no matter how much
Mm-hmm.
I put into that. And I had to learn
Mm-hmm.
kind of the hard way
Yeah.
that there's this balance
Mm-hmm.
between, like, projecting, and we call it intention, vision, manifestation.
Yeah.
You intend with the vision to manifest, and then letting go. Because
Yeah.
sometimes when we let go, there's something so much bigger. I could never have imagined
Yeah.
when I was that old that I was going to be this incredible emissary for Einstein, that I would have delivered this brilliant work. I could never have imagined it. So I think there is a beautiful balance of that. And then coming back to present moment and learning for all of us to live in that moment, like, not trying to get what we want, but trying to want what we have,
Yeah.
as a way to empower ourselves to then, like you say, to shape our worlds into what we want to see manifest.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think one of the big concepts that I kind of operate on is everything is tied together. Everything, we talk about dimensions, whether, something's one dimensional, two dimensional, three dimensional. I know I've read some things that suggest that there are like 20 dimensions, but our grasp, our concept of this stuff is just at the very beginning. And there's so much more. There's so much more out there. I think that when I look at some of, the people that I admire in certain fields, and technology fields and science fields and philosophy and things like that, I think about people who are able to tap into something that maybe other people said didn't exist, but they decided did exist. And then next thing you know, we're talking about it. I mean, some of the strange concepts that we have now, like, right now we can teleport a particle from this planet into space, and we can travel into space, and, we can microwave food by putting it in this little thing and closing the door and pressing 30 seconds, and our food is heated up. But if you take some of that stuff back in time, maybe 1,000 years or whatever, it would have seemed fantastical. So I honestly think that a lot of the things that you're doing are completely on the brink of who we're evolving into, because if you compare who we are today to the life that maybe we experienced thousands or even millions of years ago, it's like light years. It totally seems fantastical, the life we live today, for our ancient ancestors.
Yes, and when I started to do this work back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
world peace was a really pleasant idea, but nobody felt any big urgency, I don't think, in
Right.
back in the 80s. And also that people, like, back in the 90s when I started to channel the groups, and they were saying that, look at the chair, at the root of the chair is emotion. And at the time, I couldn't even grasp what that meant. But it was an important piece of this long life story that I've been on, where now we find out emotion with this capital E is defined as this sort of primordial soup of the basis of what matter is made up of. Okay, so I think back to 96 when they were saying that, and I was wondering, what is this? And now in 2024, I've probably done about 70 podcasts in the past year.
Mm-hmm.
And just to get this information out, to be talking about it, to be bringing it up, to be stimulating people's thinking and inspire them, like you said, to think outside the box. And almost everybody, almost 100% of the people that I talk to today get it. Nobody instantly understands my particular work without looking at it, but the
Mm-hmm.
concepts of it, it's like, yes, 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 yes. So we have come so far just in 30 years, much
Yeah.
less 1,000 years. And where we're going, I have so much more hope than probably average people in this
Yeah.
crazy world of ours
Yeah.
today. Because I see our collective consciousness really, really unifying and coming together. And some of the byproduct of some of the unfortunate experiences of war and
Mm-hmm.
destruction are the opening up of people's compassion.
Yeah.
And that's what's really needed today.
No, I totally agree with that. And one of the big things, I'm a huge believer in the law of attraction. And one of the big things that some of the things that you talk about remind me of is that I know, generally speaking, every year I generally invest in my self-development, self-improvement, and mental flexibility. And so usually what I'll do is there's a company that I buy what I call personal development products from, self-improvement, and I use those with my clients too. I share them with them for free, which is one of the benefits for people coming to me. It's not just me, working with them in office and them doing things outside the office, but they also have these tools that I share with them that I use for myself, but I also share with them. And one of those tools that I got a few years ago was Joe Vitale's Law of Attraction course. And one of the things that his course, and I would strongly recommend anybody listening to check out that course, but basically one of the things he teaches in that course, beyond explaining the law of attraction and what it is and how it works and and just kind of metaphysical aspects of that, is he talks about when you want something or you desire something, be really, really specific about it. So when you ask God for something, or you ask the universe for something, or you ask for yourself for something, be as specific as possible. Don't just ask to be rich. Ask to be this, 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 this. Don't just ask to be great. Be really, really specific about it. And according to him, you're more likely to get what you want if you specifically channel and transmit that. And I truly believe it. And it reminds me, just kind of me sitting here thinking and kind of spinning some of these theories and concepts and ideas in my head. What you're doing very much reminds me of that, because to me, that's more of a singularity. The closer you are in matching exactly what you want to a channel with where that exists elsewhere in the universe, I think makes it much more likely for you to get it and obtain it.
Yeah, I agree. There's just one part of the law of attraction that I think Einstein has revolutionized.
Huh?
And that is that there's this idea that there's negative or lower level emotions, and then there's, the more preferred sort of higher level emotion. Where we are, we divide emotion separately from intellect. So
Yeah. True.
there's the feeling of depression, the feeling of anger, the feeling of anxiety, and then there's the thoughts of anxiety and the thoughts of depression. And what we do is we teach people how to, because we want the whole bunch of emotion flowing up through, because all of emotion is going to inform intuition of what's that next best step. We don't want to suppress it. And in fact, if you think of it just on a scientific level, if emotion is this primordial soup of the physical realm,
Mm-hmm.
you can't have the color wheel without red.
Right.
So we want to breathe all of this. We process emotion with our breath and our body, but keep it away or redirect it into other intellectual messages, so that you don't let a depressive thought emotion marry itself to a depressive thought. Oh, I feel this, and so all these terrible things going to happen. But instead, I have many mantras. One of them was, I don't need to know why I'm mad. I need to just feel and breathe. I need to just
Right.
move this energy without letting it be into those projective thoughts that then create that reality.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I know when clients come to me, especially with anger management and issues like that, one of the things that I try to do is share with them the difference between an emotion and a feeling. And how those manifest and how you can feel something and allow yourself to feel that, but you don't always have to react to it, which leads to an emotional response. And so, and something else that goes likewise with that is the Sedona method, which is another thing that I strongly believe in, and just it's kind of releasing things, allowing things, letting go of things, so that you don't get tangled up in their energy.
Yes, because they become the projections when that emotion moves up that wave and it marries to those intellectual responses. Because, like you said, it's a decision. And in our model where ego is an intellect and it can override what intuition is telling you. Like, you might have all this anger, but intuition is maybe going to say, go stomp on sidewalks, or go feel and breathe. But it gets into that thought process. It's where, no, I have to act on this and I have to be in charge.
Right.
So it's and all of these methods are leading to that same conclusion, to that same end, I think, where we're unifying ourselves. Our thoughts are in line with what our intuition wants us to do in any given moment, and our feelings are flowing. And I think intellect and thinking is the greatest challenge that humanity has, of how to really master that part of ourselves.
No, I totally agree with that. Oh my God, this has been such a treat, Barbara. I've learned this has been like a refresher course on metaphysics for me. And a lot of the things, the way that you presented them, especially in terms of, like, for instance, maps of consciousness and unified theory and compassion and just kind of tapping into different sources of energy and different channels. I love this, and I cannot wait to read more. Tell us about where listeners can find your books and information about you, or book you as a facilitator or as a speaker and things like that.
Well, I've got two websites. One is Barbara with, BARBARAWITH, barbarawith.com. And that's my personal website. You can book a reading with me and it'll link up to everything else. But I also have other things. I'm a investigative journalist, and right now I'm doing the series on propaganda and
Oh,
indoctrination,
wow.
how to kind of undo it, because conflict revolution is the ultimate sort of attack on personal propaganda. You're right,
Right.
when our thoughts are telling us we're not good enough, etc. But Synergy Alliance
Uh-huh.
LLC,
Uh-huh.
Synergy Alliance,
Yeah.
that's the publishing company, and that's going to be everything. That's going to be the deep dive into the psychic sorority, conflict revolution, Einstein, and some of my associates. There's some more books on there that I didn't write, that my associate Kimberly Phelps wrote, Second Coming,
Hmm.
Awakening the Christ Within. And so that's where you can really find. And I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter,
Okay.
Psychic Sorority, Barbara with, Instagram, all those places.
Awesome. So everybody go out there, check out Barbara With's books, check out Manifestation, Conflict Revolution, the New Operating System, check out Imagining Einstein, check out Party of 12, both of those books, and Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, Talking with the Angels. And here's what I think. This is just kind of my take. I truly, like I said, I'm a huge lover of science fiction movies. And the reason why is because I think they allow my brain to be more flexible and to challenge some of my beliefs. And I know one of my favorite movies, The Matrix, there's a kid who's looking at a spoon, and the character Neo, played by Keanu Reeves, is in the same room with the kid, and he sees the spoon move, and then the kid explains to him, it's not the spoon that moved, it's your mind. And so I love things that kind of bend the mind and challenge my mental flexibility, and allow the fabric of my mental space and my consciousness, allow those maps to vibrate in different ways and grow and expand and change and evolve and things like that. So definitely check out these books. Allow your brain to grow and expand, and you'll start to see things in some dimensions that you didn't previously see. I promise you that will happen. Definitely go to Barbara's website, check her out, check out Synergy Alliance LLC, things like that. And you, do you have a podcast, Barbara, or no?
I have a YouTube channel,
Uh-huh.
and also on my website on Synergy Alliance and Barbara with, you can hook up to all my free channeling. I do a lot of channeling groups, quite a bit on YouTube, but I haven't been, it's one of those things on my
Yeah,
checklist
I
about,
get it.
I'm
Trust
going to
me.
just do a podcast.
I
Yeah.
get it. I get it. Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. You've been a true treat. I have one question left for you, Barbara. In this crazy, troubled world we live in, where we read about all these crazy world events and wars and election drama and all these kind of things, what's one kind of central message that you would leave people with in terms of what they can hope for in the future?
I would say that don't underestimate how important our work, our self love, getting ourselves unified, getting ourselves healed, doing all this work. Never underestimate how much that work has on the macrocosm,
Mm.
because it can sometimes look really dire if you're just looking into the
Hmm.
physical world.
Yep.
But when we become that change, we naturally help those ripples of peace go out. And you know what? Especially in this political climate, because one of my big commitments is not to let this political climate separate me from everybody. I don't care. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care what your your position is, let's all have open, critical minds that are hungry for the truth and keep our hearts open to each other as this unified field that we need to become. And then we can have a lot more hope. We're not just waiting for the world to change. We're actually becoming that change.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. And I also absolutely love the idea, which I always go through exercises on my whiteboard in my office with my clients, showing them if you go from the micro to the macro and back from the macro to the micro, the things that you're experiencing right there, then and there in this moment, you realize aren't as dire as you think they are. As long as you're moving back and forth, things are not as dire.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. This has been a huge treat. Guys, go out there and check out Barbara's books and her YouTube channel and all those kind of things. And thank you so much for being here, Barbara. Thanks for tuning in, guys, for another episode of the Fresh Start with Dr. David podcast, where we talk about everything has to do with human consciousness, the mind, psychology, mental health and wellness, and what's good for all of us. And with that, bye-bye. Thank you so much.